Hello and welcome to this apple drawing tutorial. Today I'm going to walk you through the process of drawing this apple with colored pencils. Before we start, I just want to say that this was a practice piece. I was testing a few things, trying some new ideas, and I definitely made a couple of mistakes along the way. But that is completely fine. Mistakes are part of learning. Actually, a lot of the time, mistakes teach you more than the parts that go well. So, in this video, I will also talk about what I would do differently next time because the goal is not to pretend everything was perfect. The goal is to understand the process and improve from it. Before we get into the tutorial, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow and I appreciate it a lot. For this drawing, you will need a pencil for the sketch and then a few colored pencils. For the cast shadow, I use different shades of gray and black. Actually, I use steel, just don't do it, use gray and blacks. For the apple itself, I used around 4 shades of red and 2 shades of yellow. For the highlights, I used pink and white. For the small top area of the apple, where the stem would come out, I used green and dark green. And later in the drawing, I also used darker colors. For the deepest shadows, you can use dark purple, dark green, or black. But I will explain later why I think dark purple would probably be a better choice than black in some areas. For blending some of the shadow transitions, I used an icy gray color. So let's get started. The first step is the sketch. I personally believe that a good sketch is really important, even for a simple drawing like an apple. If you are drawing just one object, I like to place it nicely in the middle of the paper. Does it matter that much for a practice drawing? Honestly, no, but I like things to be centered and planned properly. Yes, I know I'm a bit of perfectionist, and yes, it can be annoying. So, first, I lightly sketch a square or a simple guide box in the middle of the paper. This helps me know where the drawing will sit and stops the object from slowly drifting too far to one side. Once I have the guide box, I start sketching the apple. When you're sketching something, it is usually best to begin with simple geometric shapes. For an apple, the basic shape is close to a circle. It does not need to be a perfect circle, and actually, it is better if it's not perfect. Real apples are not perfectly round. They have small bumps, soft curves, little uneven areas, and that is what makes it feel real. Those small imperfections are important. They give the drawing character. And honestly, that is also one of the beautiful differences between handmade art and AI generated images. Handmade art has personality, it has small decisions, small mistakes, and little imperfections that make it feel human. To help with the symmetry, I lightly mark a cross inside the apple shape and I place it slightly closer to the right side because I want to leave space on the left side for the cast shadow. At this stage, everything is very light. I'm not pressing hard with the pencil, I'm just finding the shape. Once I'm happy with the outline, I press a little bit more with the pencil so I can see the final shape more clearly. Then I add the small indentation at the top of the apple. This is the stem cavity or the little hollow where the stem would come out. For now, I keep it very simple, just a small curved shape. Now, this is where I made my first questionable decision. I thought it might be a good idea to start with the cast shadow before coloring the apple. In my head, it made sense at the time. I wanted to establish where the object sits on the paper and where the shadow would go, but after doing it, I realized that it was not the best idea. So my advice is, do not start with the cast shadow too early. Keep the shadow until later, after the apple has more color, more form, and more clear lighting. If you do the shadow first, it is very easy to place it slightly wrong. make it too strong, or choose a color that does not fully match the final apple. And that is exactly what happened here. I also decided to feel extra special and used a teal-based layer for the shadow. It looked interesting, but I should have built the shadow more gradually, starting with light gray and then slowly going darker. So next time I would definitely leave the shadow until later. But that is fine, we learn and we continue. Now let's move to the apple itself, because this part worked much better. I started with yellow color and added to the areas where I wanted the apple to feel warmer and brighter. I placed yellow especially where I wanted the highlights and golden tones to come through later. Then I took a green pencil and added just a little bit of green near the top area and slightly into the side where I knew the apple would become darker. This helped me remember where the shadows and color changes would be. After that, I started with light red as the base layer with colored pencils. One of the most important things to understand is that the drawing is built through many layers. You do not usually get the final color with one heavy layer. Instead, you slowly build it up. So for the first red layer, I used light pressure. Another very important thing is the direction of your strokes. For this apple, the natural texture and fiber direction goes mostly from top down towards the bottom, so I followed that direction with my pencil strokes. I did not use circles for the main apple texture. I did not shade side to side. I followed the form of the apple, moving mostly from top to bottom. This helps the pencil texture support the shape of the apple instead of fighting against it. As I added the first red layer, I kept one area more yellow so the apple would have a bit more structure and a warmer highlight. You can either leave space for the highlights from the beginning, or you can later lift some color gently with an eraser. In this drawing, I did a bit of both. After the first base layer, I added a second red layer. This time I started adjusting the pressure in the areas where I wanted the apple to be darker. I pressed a little more. In the areas where I wanted to stay lighter, I kept the pressure soft. This is how the form slowly starts to appear. Layer by layer, the apple becomes more round. The darker sides become heavier, the lighter sides stay softer, and the whole object starts to feel less flat. Once the red base was in place, I returned to the top indentation. I added green in the stem cavity and then the dark green where the hole needed more depth. The small area is important because it helps the top of the apple feel like it's curving inward. For the darker shadows on the apple, I used black in some areas, but if I did this drawing again, I would probably use dark purple instead, or at least use it before adding black. Black can work, but it can also become harsh very quickly. Dark purple usually blends more naturally into red and creates a softer transition. It still gives you depth, but the color harmony is nicer. So that is one thing I would change next time: less black, more dark purple in the shadows. If you are not sure where the shadows would go, the best thing you can do is study a real apple, put it under a lamp or near a window, look at where the light hits, and notice where the shadows naturally fall. You do not have to copy it perfectly, but it gives you a much better understanding of the form. After base layers were finished, I started adding more detail. At this stage, I focused on building the small pencil strokes that follow the apple surface. Apples often have a subtle vertical streaks, color variation, and tiny shifts between red, orange, yellow, and darker tones. So I kept laying the red, slowly adding more depth and texture. For the highlights, I used like pink first. Pink helps soften the highlight and connect it to the red of the apple. That I blended some of those lighter areas with white. For blending the highlights, I use gentle circle motions. This is one of the few places where circular blending makes sense because I wanted the highlights to feel smoother and softer, not like strong vertical texture. For the darker and cooler shadows transitions, I used icy gray to blend some of the edges. This helped soften the connection between the apple and the cast shadow. Now, about the cast shadow, as I said earlier, I started to shadow too soon because of the placement was not perfect and the shape of the shadow did not fully match the final apple. I also think the teal was a little too strong at the beginning. Next time I would build the cast shadow at the end. I would start with a very light gray, then slowly add darker gray close to the apple, and only after that decide if I want to add a little bit of blue or teal around the outer edges. The darkest part of the cast shadow should usually be closest to the object, then as the shadow moves away it becomes softer and lighter. That is something I would definitely improve in the next drawing. Towards the end, I added more red and darker tones to the apple, especially on the shadow side. I also worked more around the top cavity to create more depth using green, dark green, and darker red around it. The top half of the apple is probably my favorite part of this drawing. I think it has more depth, better color variations, and a better sense of roundness. The bottom half, however, feels a bit too flat to me. I think I could have added more gradual shadow there, more color variation, and maybe followed the curve of the apple more carefully with the strokes. But overall, I'm happy with this as a practice piece. It helped me understand what worked and what I would change next time. I learned that the apple texture works best when I follow the natural direction of the form. I learned that the cast shadow should come later. I learned that black can be useful, but it needs to be handled carefully. And I learned that dark purple would probably be better shadow color for the red areas. So if you are trying this yourself, remember, start light, build slowly, follow the shape of the apple, and don't worry if it's not perfect. Practice drawings are not supposed to be perfect. They are supposed to teach you something. And honestly, that is what makes them valuable. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what you would like me to draw next. See you in the next one. Later!